you know one shocking behind-the-scenes fact about the Quiet Place movies? Michael Bay is one of the producers. I find that hard to believe. The Quiet Place movies are nothing like Transformers. Quite the opposite. I mean, the Transformers movies are like the noisiest movies ever made. Shh. A Quiet Place Part 2. Written and directed once again by John Krasinski, who also wrote and directed its predecessor, and is the 2021 follow-up to the 2018 game-changing horror flick, A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place Part 2 tells the story taking place right where Part 1 left off after the death of the father of the family and the widowed mother with her deaf daughter and her two sons. They've left their home into the outside world that is crawling with the aliens that will rip them limb from limb if they hear a sound, and they search for survivors and come across Cillian Murphy and Djimon Hounsou's character, and they make a brand new sound weapon that can be used against the aliens. That could be humanity's one last hope. With A Quiet Place 2018 shocking moviegoers with how good it was, and that movie, well, made John Krasinski a household name in Hollywood, and it was inevitable A Quiet Place would get franchised, because studios want to franchise every successful movie. But A Quiet Place Part 2 was initially completed and set for a summer 2020 release, but because of a certain virus that was one of the contributing factors that made 2020 a shit year, it was delayed and pushed back a year to summer 2021, and was one of the first movies to release once lockdown lifted that summer. And as for the quality of the film itself, I mean, it's better than it has any right to be. Is it better than A Quiet Place Part 1? Certainly not. The first Quiet Place is still John Krasinski's true labour of love, but Part 2, given the act it had to follow and all the expectations for it, it's still a worthy continuation. And it's, if you think about it, it is a story you can tell in a sequel. Like, of course, we'd be worried sick about the family after the losses they went through in the first film, and now they're homeless, and with those things out there, and we want to know, is there any hope to restore the planet to how it was before the alien invasion? And this movie tells that story exceptionally well, and in the opening prologue is one of the best parts. It's literally what will happen in A Quiet Place Day 1, the prequel. If you couldn't have guessed, that is my motivation for reviewing Quiet Place Part 2 just before I reviewed the prequel Day 1. And honestly, the prologue in this movie better executed the alien invasion on Day 1 than the prequel will. And as we see, it's the only time we see John Krasinski as the father in the movie, and it feels so apocalyptic, like all hell has broken loose, and uh, and for the most part in this movie, you are gripped, and you want to help this family just find the thing that can repel and combat these freaking aliens that's have made Earth a hell. In fact, I'm sure moviegoers watching both these movies were so silent you could hear a pin drop in the theatre, and these are the perfect examples of why you shouldn't talk during a movie, as SpongeBob said in Wigstruck. Emily Blunt as the mother, she is just as excellent as she was in the first film, now being widowed and having to protect 3 children, one of which is only an infant. She is a super tough mother and a real warrior, and as is her daughter, who is my favourite of her children. And the daughter continues to be my favourite Quiet Place character, as being deaf, she has the disadvantage in comparison to everybody, not being able to hear the monsters, and yet she is an extra badass and super protective of her mum and brothers. And Cillian Murphy and Djimon Hounsou are awesome new additions to the cast. Yeah, Robert Oppenheimer himself. In fact, this was the first movie that him and Emily Blunt starred in together before they would star in Oppenheimer. So while they may not play a married couple in this movie, they still have convincing chemistry. And Djimon Hounsou, he's always a badass in anything he's in. And the scenes where they do go against the monsters, boy, do you go all right, that they're not invincible after all, and there is hope, and it does expand on the apocalyptic feel of the first film taking place outside of the home, and so it feels very much like our heroes are in a Last of Us situation, and the aliens are very reminiscent of the afflicted in The Last of Us, and it's just as well shot as the first movie, just as well the scores. The score is just as bone-chilling, and that cliffhanger ending does make you hungry for A Quiet Place Part 3, where I think this story will finally get properly resolved. Part 3 is supposed to come in 2025, and if it can be the best of this trilogy, well, that would be remarkable. My only flaws of this movie and why I would give the edge to the first Quiet Place is that I don't think it's as terrifying as the first film, so I do think the scare factor here is a little weaker. It's not as tension filled, as there's not as much of the family attempting to be silent to avoid the aliens, which is what made the first film a masterclass in suspense on film, and it's generally less emotional and has a little less heart than the first film, and is kind of more of a survival road movie. Yeah, whereas the first film felt like more of a family drama. Even if this wouldn't make my top 10 of 2021, it could make my honourable mentions, and John Krasinski is still did a impressive job with Part 2. It still kicks the living daylights out of it for his worst movie. So yeah, A Quiet Place Part 2. It still does the Quiet Place legacy proud, and all I can say is well, roll on part 3.
I give A Quiet Place Part 2 4 stars out of 5. Great sequel.
So yeah, A Quiet Place Day 1 sure does have a hard actor to follow, and my hype for it has decreased dramatically after hearing some underwhelming reactions to it. So yeah, I'm going into it being prepared that it's gonna be uh, the weakest Quiet Place movie. Well, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. And what are your thoughts on A Quiet Place Part 2? And which are you more of a fan of, the first Quiet Place or Part 2? Please comment and let me know. Please like this video and subscribe. Please follow on Twitter and on Instagram. And I'll see you all next time when I review A Quiet Place Day 1. And remember, movies are us. Bye, guys.